Only the Avatar can master all four elements and bring balance to the world.
What? Bring balance to the world? Listen, girl, before you go about bringing balance to the world, you gotta bring balance to your own show. Cause I don't know what happened, but it ain't there, Korra. It ain't there. The Legend of Korra is a frustrating series for me. When this show first came out and the word on the street was that it wasn't as good as Avatar, I'll admit it, I bought into the anti-hype and didn't even bother watching it. It wasn't until years later that I sat myself down and had the chance to decide for myself my own thoughts on the show. And this is where the frustration comes in. At first, I thought the Avatar fans that didn't like The Legend of Korra were acting like Star Wars fans when they go, "It's different, thus it's bad and the worst thing ever." I liked what I saw at first, but as the show went on, I noticed something just wasn't right. It was like the writers of Avatar: The Last Airbender forgot how to make a great show. Notice how I didn't say a good show, because Legend of Korra is a good show. Standing on its own merits, Legend of Korra is a solid piece of entertainment. But the problem is that Avatar wasn't simply good, it was great. The stories, the characters, the perfect balance between serious and silly. They achieved something that very few shows are able to do. But then came in Korra and they just...
And then you had to just go and ruin the ride.
Characters would make decisions that make no sense. Korra ended up being the pawn of a villain way too many times, and the payoff of these stories did not match the potential of where they could have gone. But despite my many disappointments with Korra, there is in fact one area that it excels in. There is one thing that Korra does right, and that thing is its presentation of mental health. What does The Legend of Korra show us about mental health? I'm the guidance guy, and your internet school counselor is going to help you master the elements of your mind. When it comes to The Legend of Korra, or any show for that matter, your level of enjoyment with the series is going to hinge on how much you like the main character. And there are people who are not fans of Korra, and I understand that. She can be brash, self-centered, and tends to not think things through, which led to a lot of very avoidable situations for her that didn't need to happen. Like how Season 2 wouldn't have happened with the whole Unalaq mess if she had just stayed with Tenzin, or roughly 75% of her relationship with Mako. The chick would put her own life on hard mode sometimes for no reason. But despite all that, she had the desire to do what was for the best good. And I think the reason why a lot of people don't cling to Korra like they do to Aang is because Korra was just a little too different from Aang. And to those people, I mean, come on, what did you expect? You can't have two avatars in a row who end up being essentially Dalai Lama Jr. Yes, Korra's personality is a huge shift when compared to Aang, but let me ask you something. Let's say Korra wasn't the avatar in this series, and say it was Sokka. How do you think he would act as the Avatar? Let's be real, he'd be acting a lot like Korra. Not exactly the same, but pretty close. So just something to think about. And as we see Korra grow up from the beginning of the show, she's not only aware of her status as the Avatar, she revels in it. She fully embraces the role and is ready to do the work of the Avatar. And as Season 1 rolls on, she gets her chance and quickly learns that there's much more to being the Avatar than just mastering the elements and crushing goons with them. She has to learn how to work with people. She had to learn politics. She had to learn that brute force was not the answer to everything. But at the end of Season 3, Korra begins her greatest battle. The battle for her mind. The Legend of Korra began perhaps its strongest arc at the end of Season 3. Korra is taking on Zahir, the leader of the Red Lotus, after breaking free from his captivity in order to restore the balance that the group has diligently tried to upend. But in this battle, Korra finds herself not just taking on Zahir, she's also fighting against a poison that is tearing her body apart, greatly diminishing her abilities. And though in the end she's able to do her thing and stop Zahir, and though the poison is eventually taken out of her, the mercury left some lingering side effects. For a while after that battle, Korra is confined to a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. And as shocking as that image of the Avatar in a wheelchair is, this is just the beginning of her struggles. Because with time and Katara's help, she's able to walk again. She had to put in a lot of work and get through a lot of frustration, but she made it. However, even as she began to walk again, we noticed that something else is off about the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Because as Korra began to regain her ability to walk and to fight, She found herself plagued by nightmares and flashbacks. Her physical abilities were improving, but her mental health was in tatters. And this was because we see perhaps the best aspect of the Legend of Korra, the importance of mental health. The first aspect of Season 4 that Korra shows us about mental health is that it shows the importance of meaning behind the event. One may wonder why it took Korra so long to get her mojo back. We may be tempted to think that being able to walk again would be harder than getting over the hump of entering the Avatar state. After all, Zahir's gone, he's not a threat anymore. Why is she still worried about him? Because as in so many cases in regards to our own inner life, sometimes our responses to an event isn't completely about the event itself, but about what that event represents. Remember, Korra grew up not just as the Avatar, but she was proud of it. Lest we forget her first line in the series.
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
Being the Avatar was part of her identity, and part of that identity was the idea that she was unbeatable, that she was the master of the elements, she would be the favorite in every match. But then she had this battle in which she was literally crippled by the enemy. The mighty Avatar now has to learn how to walk again. And this is after she was manipulated into bringing Vaatu back into the world. This was after she lost her connection to her past lives and to the Avatar spirit. And this was after she lost her bending abilities to Amnon. Some Avatar fans love to clown on Korra's mistakes and blunders, and trust, she's well aware of them as well. And the aftermath of the Zahir battle was the last straw for her. Here she was, the Avatar, who can't walk, who can't perform one of the most defining acts of the Avatar, and ultimately, who can't protect others. Even though she beat Zahir, she felt defeated. She felt powerless, which is the opposite of how she's seen herself all her life, and she feels like a failure. The image that she has had for herself her entire life has now been destroyed, and now she has to pick up the pieces. To Korra, being poisoned wasn't about being afflicted with lethal material, it was about losing her conception of herself. The second aspect of Korra's mental health that was explored was how long she held on to her pain. In her quest to rid herself of the residual mercury in her system, she finds the legendary earthbender herself, Toph, to do the job. And there's a guidance guide that I did on top if you want to check that out, once you've liked and subscribed and done the YouTube thing. But the problem was not that Toph couldn't get the poison out. I mean, this is Toph we're talking about, of course she could do it. The issue was that Korra wouldn't let her do it. Toph explains to Korra that she was subconsciously keeping the poison in her body, preventing Toph from doing the thing that Korra came all this way for her to do. And this is something that I can relate to when working with students. There are times when students would come in ask for me for help, wanting help, but their situation gets worse or it doesn't change because even though they want things to be different, either through their actions or attitudes, they cling to the very thing that's holding them back. With Korra, this was very literal, but for us, it's going to look different. Like someone who's in a toxic relationship who doesn't leave because they believe the person could change, or someone who avoids striving for excellence because they fear they might fail. And when we hold on to our pain, we don't get better, and even put ourselves at risk of getting worse. Holding on to our pain is like keeping poison in our body. It drains us, it hurts us, and it prevents us from being our very best. And as Season 4 continued, we find out the reason why Korra was keeping the poison inside was because she was unable to let go of the past. We already went through the physically painful experiences that Korra had to go through in the series, and even though they may have not been a core reason for her psychological torment, we can't ignore the mental strain that she's been under too. She's had to deal with the pressure of not just being the Avatar, but being the Avatar that was after Aang, who was considered the GOAT of all Avatars. Ask any younger sibling what's it's like to be the follow-up act to someone everyone regards as the greatest thing ever. It ain't easy. And Korra being Korra, she didn't make it any easier on herself. So she's had to deal with people being disappointed with everything she did. Then there's the fact that Unalaq manipulated her, pitted her against her own father, and ultimately tried to kill her. And we tend to forget this, but Unalaq was her uncle. What happened to her was some Lion King levels of trauma. And sadly, the story kind of glosses over this fact, but that had to have an impact on our young Avatar, having to go against your own family for the sake of protecting the world. Then there's the fact that she disappeared while recovering, and And when I say that, I don't just mean ducking over to Katara's place, but straight up ghosting everyone except for Asami. And we can see that she regrets her choices. And when you add that up on top of everything else, it's really tough to confront all those feelings of disappointing others, disappointing yourself, and the overall cycle of bearing and inflicting pain that has been a part of Korra's history. But this is where hope shows up. It's only when Korra makes a concerted effort not just to get rid of the literal poison in her body, but the mental poison that's been keeping her out of the Avatar state and preventing her from becoming the Korra that she can be. And she did whatever it took, even going as far as visiting the man who poisoned her in the first place. And it's because she fiercely fought for her future, because she decided to be back 100%, that she pushed through the physical and mental pain, confronted her past, and once she made peace about what happened, she saw her fear leave her. And we're left with a Korra who on one hand was the same Korra that we've always known, but is also the best Korra that we've seen up until this point. And with this updated version of the Avatar, she was able to prevent the Earth Empire from wreaking havoc with their atomic bomb metaphor, and stop Kuvira from tearing apart the peace that Korra's been fighting so hard for. And it's this story arc in Korra that not only reminded me of the excellence in storytelling that the writers did on the regular with the last Avatar, but also the potential we have to do the same thing in our own lives. If there's anything that The Legend of Korra shows us, and Avatar 2, is that being the hero is tough. It's not always fun in games protecting the city or the world from every major threat that comes in contact with it. There's always going to be collateral damage, not just to the buildings that get wrecked in every landmark battle, but to the heroes themselves. I mean, that was Tony Stark's whole arc in Iron Man 2. You don't almost die and just get over it simply because you won the battle. And Korra shows us the same thing. When we go through fights in life, even when we win, there's still going to be some battle scars. And if we're not careful, those scars can become infected and causes harm to ourselves, our relationships, and our goals for ourselves. And that's why maintaining strong mental health is so important. Keeping our stress levels down, taking time for ourselves, and making sure that the poisons of bitterness, cynicism, and self-doubt get expelled from us whenever they pose a threat. And that can show in so many different ways. So if you're not sure where to start, write down some things you like to do, people in your life that add to you instead of subtracting, and invest in those activities and people. And as you go, remember this: although Korra didn't heal on her own, she was ultimately the one who took the poison out. She needed Katara to learn how to walk again. She needed Toph to tell her that she was blocking her own progress, which all led to Korra facing her past, her enemies, and her mistakes in order to do what no one else could: heal herself. Often, people mistakenly see counselors or therapists as people who are tasked with fixing their clients. And I always hate it when people say that, because that's not our job. Our job is to guide our clients to the answers they're looking for, not to just give it to them. We're there to equip them with the skills to reach their goals, because when you accomplish something on your own, it always means more and you learn more from the experience as opposed to having someone do it for you. And that's what I want to leave you with. Remember that you don't have to fight your battles alone, but in the end, you have the ability to heal yourself and bring balance to your life. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what other characters and franchises you'd like me to discuss next. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video is ready. Until next time.